Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this evening's broadcast. My name is Eric Goldman, the editor of Holistic Primary Care, and I'm really glad you've joined us for this evening. We've got a really important topic. I know there's a lot going on out there in the world, and many things, competing for your attention, trying to get you to take a look at them. But I'm really happy that you've decided to spend an hour with us. We're going to be exploring a really, really important topic, one that's already affecting literally millions of people in this country and abroad, and it'll undoubtedly affect millions more in the decade to come. We'll be talking about basically the changes in muscle tissue that occur as we all age. There's no question that as people age, the tendency is for muscle tissue to break down, and that contributes to physical weakness, frailty, loss of balance, limitations in range of motion, and difficulties participating in healthful activities and the basics of daily life. And of course, downstream that contributes to the depression, social isolation, and just kind of general malaise that many elderly people experience. Just to put this in perspective, put some numbers on it. Every day, about 10,000 Americans hit age 65. So that's about 3.7 million new senior citizens every year. It's kind of a mind-blowing stat. There are already 5 million Americans over the age of 85, and this is all according to the Census Bureau. And octogenarians represent the fastest growing age bracket. So this is an issue, and regardless of who's in the White House or who's in the Congress or what they think should or shouldn't be healthcare, this is stuff we're all going to need to deal with. It's going to affect every one of us, either personally with a family member or extended family, or certainly socially. So we know that muscle loss and poor muscle quality are correlated with many serious diseases and causes of death. And even though this doesn't get a lot of media attention, like the more dramatic things like heart disease, cancer, or dementia, it's a major contributor to morbidity and mortality in this country. So what can we do? Well, fortunately, there is a lot we can do nutrition-wise to support healthy muscle structure and function well into old age. And to tell us about it tonight, we've got Dr. Neerav Padliya, who is the VP of Research Alliances at Myos RENS. Now, Myos is a new corporate sponsor for holistic primary care this year, and we're really excited to work with them. They've invested a tremendous amount of time, energy, and resources into research on muscle function and muscle health and how to sustain it. And they've developed a very interesting ingredient called Fortetropin, which is derived from fertilized eggs. And it forms the basis of their new physician muscle health formula. You can definitely learn more about that at myoslongevity.com. We'll tell you all about that at the end of the broadcast. Dr. Padliya has many years of experience designing and administering human clinical trials. He's an analytical chemist by training. He trained at SUNY Buffalo, and prior to his current position, he worked at Celgene, which is now part of Bristol Myers. So he's worked on the pharmaceutical side. He did a fellowship at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, so he knows a lot about nutrition from the perspective of how the federal government looks at it. And he's worked with universities and contract research organizations all over North America, Europe, and Asia, particularly focused on studying the impact of medical nutrition products on things like sarcopenia, muscle disuse, atrophy, and cancer cachexia. He's currently the manager of Myos's clinical trials programs, and he works very closely with leading anti-aging physicians across the country to try and bring the extensive preclinical and human research behind this nutrition product called Fortetropin. So we're thrilled to have him with us tonight. This broadcast is being sponsored by Myos, and I want to thank them for supporting holistic primary care. Just a few bits before I turn things over to Dr. Padliya, a couple logistic matters. The slides are available, so unless you're absolutely obsessive compulsive like me, you don't have to take notes. If you want to access that handout, just click on the little tab in your control panel that says handouts and open that, and you'll see a little PDF file in there that says Myos Physician Webinar. Just click on that and it'll download directly to your computer. We also are recording tonight, and so the recording will be available probably on Thursday or Friday. We'll send out an email with the link to the recording. So again, no need to take notes unless you want to. And as far as questions, we'll take as many questions as we can at the end of the broadcast. Just to open up that little tab that says questions, and that'll open a dialog box, and you type your questions in there, and Dr. Padliya will field them as many as we can after the didactic portion. So with that, let me turn things over to Dr. Neerav Padliya, and here we go.
All right, thanks a lot for that introduction, Eric, and good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone see the slides?
Not yet. Now we do. Yeah, just
Okay.
make that full screen if you can.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Bingo.
So, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this webinar this evening. So, this webinar is going to be divided in two. The first half of the webinar, I'm going to talk about important human clinical trials unrelated to our own research that make the connection between muscle health and longevity. And so you will get a good broad overview of the field of muscle health as it relates to longevity. And then the second half of the webinar, I'm going to focus on our proprietary product, that being Fortetropin, and Myos Physician Muscle Health Formula. And I'm going to talk about both preclinical and human clinical trials that we have done, that we have sponsored at our company to support this novel advanced nutrition product. I'm also joined here with my colleagues, Dante Carnevali, who is the company's chief strategist and head of business development, and with our chief executive officer, Joe Manello. Both of them will be on hand after the didactic portion of the presentation to answer any questions that you may have as it relates to business development or partnerships. And I, of course, will be available to answer any questions of a scientific or technical nature. So I want to start off by talking about why does muscle health matter, okay? And so first of all, muscle health is very important, doesn't really receive the attention that it deserves, but it's very important when it comes to longevity. And so there are some very important studies that have been done, human clinical trials, that I'm going to talk about in some detail, that make the connection between muscle health and longevity. One of these studies was done at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. And the other study that I'm going to talk about in some detail was done at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, that focuses specifically on muscle mass and breast cancer survival. Then I'm going to spend some time talking about quality of life. We're going to talk about frailty syndrome and the connection between frailty and sarcopenia, muscle loss. But essentially, muscle health is very important in terms of doing all of the things that we enjoy doing, whether it's playing football, whether it's going dancing, whether it's biking, all of these things, as you can appreciate, involve muscle health. Then a third reason why this is so important is bone health, right? So if, for example, muscle secretes many proteins that play a vital role in osteogenesis. Some of these proteins include insulin growth factor 1, fibroblast growth factor 2, and osteonectin. If you want to read in detail about muscle bone biochemical crosstalk, I would recommend this reference by Hamrick, number 3. But in addition to just biochemical interactions between muscle and bone, there are also extensive biomechanical interactions that take place. So muscle exerts important mechanical loading forces against bone that help bone maintain its form, its shape, its density. And this is an excellent reference by Chin that you can read about that subject. Intuitively, it makes sense that, because muscle is the primary glucose metabolizing engine of the body, it makes a lot of sense that if someone loses muscle mass, that their risk of developing type 2 diabetes is going to increase significantly. And finally, a topic that doesn't receive as much attention as it deserves is the connection between muscle health and injury, avoiding injury and falls. So, Muscle, as we can all appreciate, plays a vital role in our body's system of balance. And if our system of balance is compromised, the odds of suffering a fall or a fall-related injury increase significantly. And as you can all appreciate, experiencing a fall at the age of 60 is very different than experiencing a fall at the age of 30. And it can be devastating if it results in a bone fracture, or particularly if it results in a head injury. So this at a high level are some of the reasons why muscle health is so important. So now I want to talk about a very important human clinical trial that was done it was published in 2008, and it was done at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. And the purpose of this study was to examine the association between muscular strength and mortality from all causes in men. These men were ages, a very diverse group, ages 20 to 80. And this was a prospective cohort study that looked at 8,762 men. All of these men were evaluated at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas. And the average follow-up period for men that participated in this study was 18.9 years. The outcome measures were all-cause mortality for men in this study up to the 31st of December of 2003, and muscular strength. And muscular strength was measured by a 1 repetition maximal measures for both leg and bench press. So if you take a look at this slide here, I want you to focus on the area that I've highlighted in this red box, okay? And if you take a look at these numbers that I'm pointing to, we look at mortality, and mortality is arranged in order of muscular strength. So we're looking at the group which had the lowest muscular strength, the group that fell right in the middle, and the group that had the highest, that was in the top third of muscular strength. And when we look at mortality from all causes, you notice that the mortality rate for men which were in the lower third in terms of muscular strength was about 50% higher. If you compare 38.9 versus numbers like 25.9 and 26.6, the men in the lowest third had 50% higher mortality rate compared to men that were in the middle and in the upper third in terms of muscular strength. Now, when we look at deaths that resulted due to cardiovascular disease, you can see that the difference is even more pronounced. The rate is about twice the rate of mortality in the group that was in the lower third when we compare with the groups that were in the middle and upper thirds. And when we look at deaths related to cancer, it follows a similar trend to mortality from all causes, where it's about 50% higher. We're looking at differences between, of about 6 to about 4. And so you can see, how much of an impact muscular strength plays on longevity, looking at the data from this very large study that involved more than 8,000 men. Now, the other study that I want to talk about, the first study that we talked about was focused on men exclusively. And so now I'm talking about a study which was focused on women exclusively. And this was a study that was done at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Okay, it was a study that focused on non-metastatic breast cancer. And the study sought to ask the question that are sarcopenia, poor muscle quality, and excess adiposity at diagnosis associated with mortality in patients with non-metastatic breast cancer. And so this was an observational study. It involved 3,241 women with non-metastatic breast cancer. And they were diagnosed from over a period of 13 years. And at the time of diagnosis, CT was performed to look for sarcopenia, to look at poor muscle quality. Sorry, I got ahead of myself, and to look at excess adiposity. And in this case, in this particular study, which was published in 2018, the main outcome measures were overall survival time and all-cause mortality. And so, once again, I'd like you to focus on the region that I've highlighted in red. over here when we look at this table. And if we look at this table, the first thing that we look at is our patients that were non-sarcopenic and had low TAT. TAT stands for total adipose tissue. So these are patients which were not overweight. They didn't have, you know, too much fat mass, an excess of fat mass. And when we look at hazard ratios, this was used as our reference. And now when we compare the hazard ratio for non-sarcopenic women with low TAT, and we compare them with sarcopenic women with low TAT, you can see that the hazard ratio increases from 1 to 1.35. And now when we compare non-sarcopenic women with mid-TAT with sarcopenic women who are in the middle in terms of total adipose tissue, we go from 1.28 to 1.83 in terms of hazard ratio. And likewise, we go from 1.45 to 2.05 hazard ratio when we compare non-sarcopenic women that had a high total adipose tissue compared with those who are sarcopenic obese. So low muscle mass, high total adipose tissue. And if you look at this graph on the right-hand side, this is a plot of, you know, on the x-axis you have years since their first CT scan, and on the y-axis you have the survival function. And you can see the clear difference between women that were not sarcopenic and women that were sarcopenic in terms of patient survival, looking at this graph, okay? So I had spoke to you about quality of life earlier, and that sarcopenia or that muscle health plays such a vital role in terms of quality of life. And so now I want to talk a little bit about frailty, which is something that has a major impact on quality of life. And so first I want to talk about what is the clinical definition of frailty. And the clinical definition of frailty, according to this 2001 reference that I've cited by Fried et al., typically involves the presence of 3 or more of the following components. And the first component is shrinking. And by shrinking, that refers to weight loss, typically weight loss of about 10 pounds or about 5%, or unintended weight loss over the last 1 year. That constitutes shrinking. The second component of that is weakness. And so when we talk about weakness, we're usually talking about a hand grip strength, which is in the bottom 20% in terms of hand grip strength. Then when the next component is poor endurance and energy. And that typically has to do with, it is typically self-reported, but, you know, it could be, for example, you know, how often are you too tired on Sunday morning to get up and get out of bed and go shopping or go to church or to do some activity. The fourth component is slowness, and slowness is typically measured by gait speed, and this is typically folks who fall in the bottom 20% of gait speed. And finally, we have low physical activity levels, which is usually measured by how many calories are expended, you know, using a handheld device or a pedometer or something of that sort. Now, we talk about frailty because frailty is so important when frailty and muscle loss have such an important connection. And so I've cited this article by Professor John Morley at St. Louis University, who is a key opinion leader in this field. And he has written here very clearly that this editorial has suggested that sarcopenia is the major cause of frailty. And he has gone on to recommend that for these reasons, we suggest that it is time to couple sarcopenia and frailty and increase its community awareness. So the approach that our company has taken to addressing sarcopenia and frailty focuses on the proprietary ingredient called Fortetropin. And so what is Fortetropin? So Fortetropin is a natural bioactive composition which is manufactured using fertilized chicken egg yolk. And so the idea is that we use a patented low temperature manufacturing process that helps to retain the natural bioactivity of the proteins, peptides, and lipids that are naturally present within egg yolk. So we circumvent the use of heat, during the pasteurization process, and rather we use a technology called high pressure pasteurization, which is coupled by something called freeze drying, which is very effective in terms of pasteurization, but helps to preserve the bioactivity of these molecules. Now, Fortetropin has been shown in multiple clinical studies to increase muscle mass and strength, to prevent muscle atrophy, and to also improve recovery. The company, MyoStrengths Technology, owns 2 issued US patents that relate to the manufacturing process of Fortetropin. And so this is our product that we are marketing towards the anti-aging community. It's called Myos Physician Muscle Health Formula. It's a natural product that's backed by rigorous clinical research. And the product is comprised of 3 simple ingredients: Fortetropin, and then there is a little bit of dextrose and natural vanilla flavor. And each serving is about 47 calories, and it's manufactured in state-of-the-art modern GMP facilities, both in the United States and in Germany. Now, I want to give you just a general overview of the research that's behind Fortetropin, and then in the subsequent slides, I'm going to talk about these in more detail. In terms of human clinical research, so we recently completed a human clinical study at the University of California at Berkeley, in which we demonstrated that Fortetropin increases the rate of muscle protein synthesis by about 15% in 60 to 75-year-old men and women. And this study was completed last year, and it's going to be presented at the International Conference on Frailty and Sarcopenia Research in Toulouse, France, which will take place next month. We did a study at the University of Tampa in young men, 18 to 21 years of age, in which we demonstrated that Fortetropin increased muscle size, mass, and strength. And this study was published in 2016 in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. And we have a study underway in the laboratory of Professor Stuart Phillips at McMaster University. Professor Phillips is another key opinion leader in the field of muscle physiology. And this study is going to involve looking at the impact of Fortetropin on recovery from muscle disuse atrophy using a model called the unilateral leg immobilization model. And I'm going to talk about that study in detail in the subsequent slides. We have also done a number of studies in animals. We've done extensive preclinical research. I'm going to talk about a study that we completed last year involving 100 dogs at Kansas State University that underwent an orthopedic surgical procedure. And we demonstrated in the study that Fortetropin helped to reduce muscle atrophy and improved recovery in these dogs. We did a study in rodents at University of Tampa to understand the mechanism of action. And we were able to determine that Fortetropin functions in part by upregulating mTOR pathway activity, by downregulating myostatin expression and the receptor of myostatin, ACTR2B, and also by downregulating activity of the ubiquitin proteasome pathway. And we have another study that is currently underway at Kansas State University looking at the impact of Fortetropin on the quality of life and mobility in geriatric dogs. So the first study that I want to talk about in some detail is a study that was done in the laboratory of Professor Bill Evans at University of California at Berkeley. And this was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled human clinical trial in which we sought to examine the impact of the rate of muscle protein synthesis that Fortetropin had in this particular population. And these subjects were comprised of 10 men and 10 women. And so half of the subjects, 5 men and 5 women, received Fortetropin, and half of them received a macronutrient matched placebo control, which was in this case cheese powder. The subjects were 60 to 75 years old, okay, and the idea is that all of the subjects in the study, they had to consume a deuterium oxide tracer every day over the duration of the study for 21 days, a heavy water tracer. And so the idea is that some of that deuterium oxide, it gets incorporated into all of the proteins in the body. And because deuterium oxide, it's heavy water, it has a different molecular weight compared to regular water. We can do a muscle microbiopsy and measure the amount of deuterium that's present there, and then use that to measure the rate of muscle protein synthesis. And what was determined was that Fortetropin supplementation led to an increase of about 15% in MPS rate after 21 days when compared with subjects that received the placebo. And as I had mentioned earlier, the study has been accepted for presentation at the ICFSR conference in Toulouse, France next month. So the other study that I'm going to talk about is a study that we conducted. We initiated it in 2014. It was published in 2016, and it examined the impact of Fortetropin on muscle gain. And in this particular study, we had 3 arms. We had there were 45 males that were randomized, and they were between 18 to 21 years of age. It was also double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial. And in this particular study, the subjects were required to perform resistance training twice per week, and they were closely monitored by a dietitian. And in this case, the primary endpoints were skeletal muscle hypertrophy and also muscle performance. And if you look at this graph, so the dark purple corresponds to before, at the time that the study was started, and the light purple corresponds to 12 weeks after the initiation of the study, where the subjects were at. You can see that in the groups that received both doses of Fortetropin, 6.6 grams per day, and the 3x dose of 19.8 grams of Fortetropin per day, you can see that there were significant increases that were statistically significant in terms of lean body mass for both doses and also muscle thickness in centimeters. So now I'm going to talk about this study that we did at Kansas State University. And this was a study that was done in dogs, but it's a very important study because this is what gave us the motivation to do the most recent clinical trial that we recently initiated at McMaster University. So TPLO surgery is a surgical procedure that's performed to repair tears of the cranial cruciate ligament. The cranial cruciate ligament is a ligament in dogs which is analogous to that of the anterior cruciate ligament, or the ACL, in humans. And so when dogs undergo this surgery, the limb that is operated on, it has to be immobilized for several weeks after surgery. And that typically results in significant muscle atrophy, okay, due to disuse of that limb. And so the idea was that following TPLO surgery, we had 50 dogs that received Fortetropin on a daily basis. And we had another group of 50 dogs that were given cheese powder because that's a macronutrient matched placebo. It has a nutrition profile that's very similar to Fortetropin. And then we performed, the veterinarian, the principal investigator, performed evaluations at 0, 8, and 12 weeks post-surgery. And primarily they focused on thigh circumference, muscle thickness, stance analysis, and blood chemistry. And what they found in this study was that Fortetropin prevented muscle loss in both affected and unaffected limbs when compared with subjects that received the placebo control. This was statistically significant. Fortetropin supplement dogs, they had a greater improvement in weight-bearing capacity on their operated limb relative to those that received the cheese powder control. And finally, Fortetropin supplementation prevented a rise in levels of a protein called myostatin. So myostatin is a very important protein which essentially puts the brakes on the growth and development of new muscle tissue. And so as a result, there are many pharmaceutical companies that are working on trying to address myostatin from a pharmaceutical standpoint. So as a result of that study that we did at Kansas State University, we got very excited, And we reached out to Professor Stuart Phillips, a well-known thought leader in the field of muscle physiology, who is at McMaster University in Hamilton, Canada, outside of Toronto. And we decided to initiate this human clinical trial that involves a well-known model called the unilateral leg immobilization model. And so the idea is that subjects that are going to participate in this study, there will be 2 parallel groups, each comprising 12 subjects, 12 male subjects in each group. One group of subjects is going to receive Fortetropin, while the other will receive the placebo control. And each of these subjects, for 2 weeks, they will take part in a 2-week run-in period where they will take the product for 2 weeks on a regular basis, either Fortetropin or placebo. Then for 2 weeks, there will be an immobilization period, a casting period, where these subjects will have to wear a knee brace for 2 weeks. And wearing that knee brace is going to induce muscle disuse atrophy. And then finally, after they remove the cast after 2 weeks, there's going to be a 2-week recovery period where the subjects will continue to take their assigned supplement. And the idea is to ask the question whether Fortetropin will reduce muscle disuse atrophy in these human subjects relative to placebo. So this is a study, as of January 2020, we had initiated patient recruitment, and we expect that it will probably take us between 1.5 to 2 years to complete this human clinical trial. So, this is a slide that I'm showing to just give you an overview of our patient demographics, and primarily, there are 3 patient populations that are of key interest to us. One is the sports nutrition market segment, and for the sports nutrition market segment, we have a product called Yoked. This is a picture of it, and you can go to www.yoked.com to learn more about it. And this is the key human clinical study that I had discussed earlier that supports that particular product line. It's used in the sports nutrition market. Our other patient population is the healthy aging population. And to learn more about that, you can go to Myos Longevity. And the key clinical evidence is going to be discussed in this oral presentation, which will take place next month at the ICFSR conference in Toulouse, France. And Professor Evans is currently in the process of writing the study up and submitting it as a manuscript to a peer-reviewed journal. And the third market segment of interest to us is recovery and rehabilitation. And so the scientific basis of that is the dog study that I had discussed earlier that took place at Kansas State University. A paper has been submitted to PLOS One, a revised manuscript, and hopefully that will be accepted shortly. And in the meanwhile, as I had discussed earlier, Professor Stuart Phillips at McMaster University has initiated this human clinical study that I had just discussed in the previous slide. One thing that I take great pride in are some of the really fantastic testimonials that the product has received over the years. And we've had the opportunity to work with many folks, athletes, professional athletes who have played in the NFL, the NBA, and in FIFA. But one of the stories that I found the most impactful was that from a fellow by the name of Carl Nelson. So I actually had the privilege of getting to meet Carl Nelson about 2 years ago. And Carl Nelson is a football player. He used to play for the New York Giants. And he was part of the New York Giants, part of the '86 New York Giants, the year that they won the Super Bowl in January of '87. And Carl, not only is he an amazing and offensive tackle, but he's also a cancer survivor too. So he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he had a real tough time at one point. But if you see him, he's a guy who is really in excellent physical shape, and he had told us that using the product Fortetropin over the course of 1.5 years, he managed to actually gain 15 pounds of muscle mass, and just a really exceptional guy and a really great feel-good story for all of us. So to end off, I want to leave you with this summary slide that Myos Physician Muscle Health Formula, this is a revolutionary advanced nutrition product for muscle health. It's a natural and highly safe nutrition product that can help patients gain significant muscle mass. It's all natural. As you have heard throughout the course of my presentation, the product is backed by extensive human clinical research, and we have shown in older adults and in human clinical studies that it enabled them to increase their rate of muscle protein synthesis by about 15%. And we really believe that gaining muscle mass, as research has shown, will enable patients to enjoy an active and healthy lifestyle. And the most important takeaway, I would say, is that extensive clinical research has shown the relationship between muscle health and longevity. And so at this point, that is the end of the didactic part of the talk, of the presentation. I'm joined now by my colleagues, Dante Carnevale, our Chief Strategist and Head of Business Development, and Joe Manello, who is the CEO of Myos. They will happily take any questions that you may have that relates to business development or partnerships, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have related to the scientific studies that I talked about just earlier. And that's it.
That's fantastic. Thank you much, Neerav. Very, very interesting stuff. We do have some questions coming in, but I'm going to take my editor's prerogative here and do the kickoff question. I'd like to know a little more about what actually Fortetropin is and what's the biochemistry. How does it do what it does?
Okay. Thanks for the question, Eric. So the answer is that Fortetropin is simply 100% fertilized chicken egg yolk powder. But rather than pasteurizing egg yolk powder using heat, which is the conventional pasteurization technology, we use a technique called high pressure pasteurization. And so that circumvents the use of heat altogether. The liquid fertilized chicken egg yolk is placed in bags, which is then placed inside a chamber, and it's subjected to pressures that are greater than what you would experience if you were at the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean. And at those pressures, nothing is going to survive as far as microorganisms are concerned. But it helps to better preserve the proteins and lipids that are there that have natural bioactivity. And then it undergoes this low temperature freeze drying step, and that's it. But we have intellectual property that covers that manufacturing process. And in terms of how it works by multiple mechanisms, which we've shown in preclinical studies that we've done. It upregulates a pathway called mTOR, which is important for muscle building. It puts the brakes on a protein called myostatin, which is a protein that impedes muscle growth and development. It reduces the expression of myostatin's receptor, which is called ACTR2B, and it downregulates an important pathway that's involved in muscle destruction called the ubiquitin proteasome pathway.
Great. Okay, Renee's got a question. Is it contraindicated in people with allergy to egg yolk proteins?
Yes, absolutely. Somebody that is allergic to eggs should absolutely not take this product.
Okay, great. And Kate would like to know, would Fortetropin help with muscular dystrophy or muscle wasting disorders? That's an interesting angle.
We don't have any data. We are interested. That's an area that we have a lot of interest in muscular dystrophy. We'd very much like to work with such patients to see if there's any potential there. And Joe, our CEO, can speak to that a bit, but we don't have data as of today.
Good evening, everyone. We have reached out to some parents of muscular Duchenne patients or Duchenne children, and we feel it is worth a try. Obviously, if they can get any benefit from our product, we think it would be great. We've seen on the canine side, dogs with serious musculoskeletal disorders getting benefit. And we feel it's worth a try. So we have a couple of patients now trying the product. We're hoping after a 3 or 4 month period, maybe their quality of life improves. So if there are any doctors here who know some patients, we gladly supply them with product to see. Obviously, if there's an egg allergy, that's an issue, but we'd love to see on an anecdotal basis of whether this can help.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe. Okay, another question from Sharon, who wants to know, what is the source of the feed for the chickens? We actually had a couple of questions come in about the feed. Is the feed organic, or the chickens raised in a free range environment? What's the situation with that?
In Germany, it is not free range. It is not organic. It is very different than the United States. So what we know in the United States as free range is, and when they're caged, in Europe, at least in Germany, the cages are large. They actually roam around the cages. It is their belief that free range chickens are actually not as good because they're concerned with the food and what they're eating, as they're roaming outside. They believe it is much better to give the roosters and hens the proper feed, and that's their ability. That's the way they go about it. So I've been there. Neerav has been there. It is not what you see in the United States. Their cages are large. They can run around their cages, but they do monitor their feed.
Okay. And another feed-related question: what goes into the feed? Is it non-GMO? And someone wants to know. Renee wants to know: is the product gluten-free?
It is non-GMO. The feed, to the best of our knowledge. And in terms of gluten-free, yes, it is a gluten-free product.
Okay. I have a question regarding, even though the lipid hypothesis of cardiovascular disease has been seriously challenged in recent years, there's still a lot of people who are concerned about cholesterol and the cholesterol in egg yolks and people making egg white omelets and all that. Is that any concern for people taking or wanting to take Fortetropin?
Well, we have looked at lipid profiles in our own clinical study that we did at University of Tampa. And in the study that we did over a 12-week period, we didn't see any statistically significant changes over 12 weeks in the subjects that participated in the University of Tampa study.
Okay.
I also think, this is Joe, I think that it's important that one serving or one daily dose of Physician Muscle Health is 2/3 of an egg yolk. We are very comfortable that there is not an issue with cholesterol with that amount. But that is really up to the patient and the doctor to decide whether that's an issue. Everyone comes from a different angle. We have plenty of people who think that, food cholesterol is not an issue. We have other people who are concerned. Most people, the fact that it's 2/3 of an egg yolk, are not concerned. So, but that's a personal decision.
And does the processing eliminate any albumin from the egg white that might be, I guess reframing the question, is there any residual albumin?
Residual, I'm sure there's going to be, right? But because, we take liquid chicken eggs and then it's separated out. The yolk is separated out from the white. So certainly there would be some residual albumin that's there from the white, but you know, most of the yolk is, the majority of the yolk is separated out from the egg white.
Oh, okay. Okay, Mark would like to know, are there any factors such as dietary or other lifestyle factors or other supplements which you suspect or have seen act as potentiators for the benefit of Fortetropin?
Potentiators in the sense that would enhance its activity?
I think that's where the question's going, yeah.
I mean, naturally, you know, the product should be taken with protein, right? Because you know, one serving of Fortetropin, 6.6 grams of Fortetropin, it only contains 2 grams of protein. So the idea is that, you know, you need to take this product with protein to ensure that you receive sufficient dietary protein in order to, I mean, experience gains in muscle mass.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. How do people use it? What's kind of like a typical regimen, if you will, for lack of a better word?
You know, typically people, I mean, the product comes in a canister with a scoop. Typically, people take one scoop and add it to a protein shake, for example, and blend it. Some people take it that way. Some people mix it with Greek yogurt. Other people mix it with cereal, with oatmeal. It can be spread on toast. There are a number of different ways it can be taken.
Mm. And the dextrose that's in there, is that just strictly for flavoring, or
Yes.
does that have some?
Yes.
Okay.
It's only there for taste and flavoring.
So really, all the bioactivity is in the Fortetropin itself.
Yes, that's correct.
And it was interesting, you got into the relationship between bone health and muscle health.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, many people who fit into that healthy aging category are going to be concerned about bone health. They may be taking bone health supplements. They may be taking bone health, drugs for osteoporosis. Any concern either with interactions or putting it the other way? How well does this play with other things that people may be taking for bone health?
Well, you know, we haven't studied its impact with other drugs. I mean, keep in mind, it's a natural food product, right? So I mean, we're not aware of any literature that suggests that people that are taking the commonly used drugs for osteoporosis should not take egg yolk, right? I'm not aware of that.
Okay. So are there any drug interactions, anything known about that?
No, I mean, the only interactions we're familiar with is that, as we discussed earlier, you know, if somebody has an egg yolk allergy, then clearly our product is not for them, right?
Okay. And so the paper that's going to be presented in France next month, will that be published? Where can we read that or read more about it?
It's in the process of being prepared for publication. You know, Dr. Evans is writing that up as a manuscript, and he will submit it to, you know, a well-reputed journal in the muscle physiology field. He's going to give it as an oral presentation. We can certainly make slides from his oral presentation available. I'm sure he won't have an issue with that after it's been presented at the meeting. And we do have a copy of an abstract that he submitted on his talk, which we could also provide anybody who is interested in that after the call.
Yeah, great. No, I'm certainly interested, because that it's something that we could spotlight in holistic primary care in the summer edition. So definitely make sure to send it to me, and I'm sure there'll be other people in the audience that would like to see that as well.
Yeah, for sure. We can send you that later this evening.
Great. So if people in the audience are interested in bringing the muscle formula into the practices to their patients, how do they go about that?
My colleague Dante can talk about that.
Okay. Hey,
Hi,
Dante.
everyone. Hey, Eric, thanks. So there's really two ways that physicians can work with Fortetropin and help provide their patients with the benefits of Fortetropin. The first way is with our finished brand that Neerav spoke about at length, Physician Muscle Health Formula. That's an exclusive to physicians brand. It's not available direct to consumer, so you would not find it on Amazon or anywhere else like that. It's only available to physicians. We sell that product to physicians at a wholesale price of $39.99 per canister, which is roughly a month's supply. The MSRP on that is $79.99. So, per canister, the physician would be able to make a margin of roughly $40 per canister. And when physicians partner with us, we provide them with a lot of support. We mail out a sales kit, which includes posters for their waiting room and their practice, trifold brochures, and we're also developing some video content for physicians to share with their patients. We look at it as a true partnership. Every step of the way, we kind of, hold the physician's hand as much as needed to make sure that they understand the process and the product, and that their patients do as well. And the second way that a physician can work with us is through the development of a white label product, where if you have an established line of supplements or a very strong established brand for your practice that you would like to be at the forefront, kind of, on the label, we would work with physicians to develop a white label product featuring Fortetropin. We could do, any combination of ingredients. We could provide the exact Physician Muscle Health Formula, which is again Fortetropin, dextrose, and vanilla, or if there's interest, could also add other ingredients like amino acids, etc. So those are the two ways that physicians can work with us. And again, in the slide deck that Neerav had been presenting from, my contact information is listed there. So if anyone in the audience is interested in learning more, has any follow-up questions on the business side, I'd be more than happy to talk through it in more detail, offline.
Great, thanks, Dante. Okay, Renee's got an interesting question / comment here. Presuming that egg yolks are high in choline, would the choline act as a precursor substrate for the synthesis of acetylcholine, and therefore potentially have benefit in lowering the risk of mild cognitive impairment?
So yes, I mean, choline is, as she pointed out, an important precursor for acetylcholine, which we know is an important neurotransmitter. The second part of the question, I'm not going to speculate. I mean, we don't have data related to that, so I just can't comment on something that we don't have actual data for.
Okay, fair enough. Certainly worth considering, though. Okay, are the ingredients of the Physician Muscle Health Formula the same ingredients that's in the yolked product?
Yes. I mean, the ingredients are the same. It's a product that's been branded differently, and as Dante had mentioned earlier, we do have a service where we develop white label products for physicians, that have large practices, and some of those white label products that we have developed do have different formulas.
This is Joe. I guess one of the issues we have with yoked, that was a name that, being 62 years old, when that name came to us and we ended up trademarking it, I didn't know what that name meant. Yoked means to be muscular. As my 16 and 17-year-old sons say, it means to be jacked. When you're my age, yoked has a very different meaning. So that's where Physician Muscle Health came from. and which is also trademarked. Believe it or not, we've also trademarked Nature's Multivitamin because we think egg yolk, and specifically fertilized egg yolk, is somewhat nature's multivitamin. And your question about choline and your question about all the ingredients in egg yolk, if you go to the Egg Nutrition Board, they will opine about cognitive health and eggs and egg yolk. We're not going to do that. You know, they have a much larger or bigger latitude to do that. We're trying to limit it to what we have, but the beauty about Fortetropin is we're delivering it in its raw state, so to speak, and that fertilized or not fertilized, but the fact that it's fertilized and its raw state, we believe, and now we see it with the science, is even more powerful than all the claims that the Egg Nutrition Board makes.
Let's go a little deeper into that, Joe. What is it about the fertilization process that increases the efficacy or the nutritional value of the egg yolk?
Well, there's two parts. There's the fertilization product and part, which I'll let Neerav speak to, but there's the fact of our process, which is not with low temperature and high pressure and then freeze drying. And we have 2 patents on this process. We're able to deliver a product similar to a cold pressed juice. You know, when you go to the store and you have, you know, I had one the other day, you know, celery and kale and everything, high pressure pasteurized or cold pressed, tends to be, and there's a lot of science backing it, that that is better for you than if you cook broccoli or, you know, you cook it. So we believe, and we've now seen it with science, that it is more powerful. Neerav will talk to you about the science behind the bioactivity of fertilized egg yolk.
So I published a paper on that subject about 5 years ago where we looked at fertilized egg yolk and unfertilized egg yolk, and we analyzed it at the proteomic level, and we did see clear differences in fertilized egg yolk 24 hours post-lay in the absence of incubation. You know, we see a significant increase in proteins that are involved in angiogenesis, like pleiotrophin, and upregulation in proteins that have important antimicrobial function. Now, we don't know what specific proteins of the ones that we saw which were differentially expressed are involved in probiotic activity, but we have seen clear differences in terms of biochemical composition. I could share that reference with you after the call. You could pass it along.
Okay, great. Any other questions regarding Fortetropin or muscle loss, sarcopenia, anything related to this? If there are no further questions, I just have one real quick one. Will there be other flavors?
You know, we have a great chocolate flavor. It's actually blended with Ghirardelli chocolate or Ghirardelli. It is so good. It's almost too good. The problem is it has an increased amount of sugar to make it taste so good. So we've debated back and forth. We think the beauty of Physician Muscle Health is the 1 gram of sugar and the 47 calories. When you start playing with the chocolate flavor to make it really good, you're going to have more sugar in it. And I will tell you, our Physician Muscle Health really tastes like cake batter. It's crumbly. You know, I know we talk about it being egg yolk powder, but it's really not. It's an egg yolk crumble. So we're going to stick with that. People seem to like that. And when we did have a chocolate, we had a chocolate raspberry flavor years ago. 80% of the people bought the vanilla flavor rather than the chocolate flavor. And so we will eventually come out with it, but we think this is a better product for the 40-year and old patient. Yeah, I mean, if someone told us they want us to create a chocolate flavor for them, we would. But we like this, and we think it's the best product for all age groups, actually.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of like truffle omelet flavor or something like that.
We do have that. It's 750 calories a serving, so.
Okay, and probably $750 a container too.
I
Just that price point, but I think we're onto something here.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Just someone out there would like to know what's the contact number for practitioner purchases?
Yeah, my cell phone number would work well. It is 848-565-8163. That's 848-565-8163, and that'll, you'll get me directly, and I'll be able to answer any questions or process an order as well.
Terrific.
I would just like to say something about our product. One, as Neerav probably talked about, it's a nutrition fact panel. It is not a supplement fact panel, which we think is important. It's a functional food that has tremendous power, and we believe this company was based on the ability to find great products, and they can be derived from food. Of all the doctors on this call know of the power you can get with food. And we look at it, it is a nutritional, it is, it's nutrition. And we think we've been able to, this company, to harness it in a way that makes it very powerful. And when I look at the concern about cholesterol or the benefits of being able to not be sarcopenic, I think the benefits far outweigh, that risk of sarcopenia. So we're pretty excited about this. Neerav is really spearheading the whole process. So just know, as Dante said, we will be partners with any of the doctors that want to come on board, whether it's through webinars, whether it's through discussions with our scientists or sales literature. We will work with anyone here to make you successful, because then we're successful.
That's wonderful. Thanks a lot, Joe, and thanks Neerav and Dante. I'm very excited about this product as well. Here at Holistic Primary Care, we see a lot of products and product launches and interesting ingredients. But this one is the first one in quite a while where I really felt like this is new, this is unique. There's really nothing else like it, and it's addressing a major unmet need, really. There's certainly many Me Too products in the supplement and functional food and functional nutrition space. And so it's pretty rare when something comes along that's like, really unique and really addressing a big problem. So more power to you guys. I'm very happy to be working with you. Thanks much for supporting Holistic Primary Care. And thanks all of you for tuning in this evening. As we said earlier, the recording will be available in about a day or so. If you haven't downloaded the slides, go to the little handouts tab right now and click on that PDF. It'll download right to your computer. And with that, let me sign off and stay tuned for more great webinars coming up later this year. This has been Eric Goldman and Holistic Primary Care and Miles Renz Technology. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure. Have a great evening. All right, we're done. All right. Nice.